Hello, welcome back to Rejuvenated Women, Impeccable Health for High-Performing Women. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Swenson-Ridley, and today I'm really excited to be joined by Sinclair Kennally, who is a detox expert on digestive disorders. She's a certified toxicity and detox specialist and the CEO of Detox Rejuvenation. We love the word rejuvenation around here. She has apprenticed with world-leading functional medicine pioneers and believes that toxins are the root cause of our health epidemics today. Both she and her partner, Michael Spendell, are survivors of complex chronic illnesses and had to learn how to heal themselves and have turned their pain into their mission. They now help thousands of others make the changes to free themselves of digestive issues and toxicity. So Sinclair, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Dr. Alex.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. We originally connected at a conference and then found out that we use a lot of the same supplements and protocols. So we're really excited to just dive into all this. But I'd love, as we get started, I always like to hear, your story, kind of how you got started doing what you do. And then we'll dive into all kinds of fun stuff today.
Well, I got started in this rather reluctantly. To be really honest, I was not a person that was great at self-care. And I had this really long-standing chronic health issues that got worse and worse and worse until my life demanded that I put my health first. So I think that happens for a lot of us Americans. It's sort of the last resort, unfortunately. Hopefully we're a part of spreading that tide.
Especially for us women, that's something I talk about a lot. I call it selfless syndrome. Mm-hmm. And so, it's that we don't want to hit the point of being forced to stop and take care of ourselves. That's a big part of why I share all this, is so you don't have to hit rock bottom. But it sounds like you had that happen to you as well.
Certainly did. I'm rather hard-headed, so it took me getting all the way to the bottom for me to really understand what was going on and allow myself to put my health first. I think you just hit the nail on the head. Yeah. For us women, especially when we feel like we have people counting on us, our families, our communities, our employees, whatever the case is, it's really hard to put ourselves first and give ourselves permission to do that. So,
absolutely.
Whatever it takes, ladies, oxygen mask on yourself first, then help everybody else.
Yes, Lauren, I just got done traveling, so it's very relevant. Own mask on first, then help whoever's next to you, your child. And and it's so true. We're better for everybody in our lives when we actually take care of ourselves and put ourselves first.
Exactly. Yeah.
In a big way. Yeah. So I have that conversation all the time. So we'll table that for a second, and let's really dive into this conversation around detox and gut health. I know we were gonna, launch into the drainage pathway and some of what happens in the body that leads to a lot of the stuff that we end up dealing with, like hormone imbalances and skin issues, and there's all kinds of stuff that tie into our gut health.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important for us all to remind ourselves that we're living in a really unprecedented time, that in so many ways we're living in this era of rapid transformation culturally and, technologically and all of that. But we've also been in what I call the era of chemicals for several decades now. Ever since World War II, we've been dumping herbicides and pesticides onto our crops. And now we're several generations into that experiment, right? So yeah, with every generation, we're building up more and more toxicity. And our beautiful digestive detox and drainage systems that we have in place just were not designed to keep up with this kind of just overwhelming inundation every day. So things that our grandma could get away with doing, smoking 2 packs a day, eating not so great, but, she grew up on a farm and had great veggies. When she was younger, she was probably born with an awesome microbiome, getting fresh produce. Mm-hmm. We just don't start out the same way anymore.
No, we really don't. And, one of the other hats I wear is as a pediatric chiropractor, and I work with pregnant moms too, but even the most natural birth, mom's the healthiest she possibly can be, kids are still having gut problems, from the get-go, because our food quality is sucks, and we've got more of these toxins and chemicals just around, and they get in our body.
Yeah, it's so helpful for everybody to remember that we're all starting a bit on the back foot, right? Because our nutrition has been stripped of its wonderful minerals and micronutrients and all the microorganisms that are supposed to be in a happy, healthy soil that should be feeding our gut all the time. And so when we don't have those in place, we become much more susceptible to issues that might crop up along the way. So if you're not feeling at your best right now, if you're struggling with having enough energy and, you have ongoing digestion issues, you're not alone. Over 2/3 of Americans have had serious digestive distress within the last week. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And it's crazy how many people think it's normal. Like, I'm going to throw my husband under the bus here. I watched him. We were traveling this last week, and he, was really good at the beginning of our marriage of like trying and pretending like he cared about being healthy and stuff. Now he's not like that great at it. So I watched him eat McDonald's, and then he got some sort of like Spam fried rice before we got on the plane, right? And I mean, he's running to the bathroom, and this is not the first time I've watched him do this. But like, we equate it as normal. It's like, oh, well, that food wasn't good for me. I'm like, and what else is it doing to your body? Like, we have to understand and recognize that. And I think as women, we're a little more tuned into this and a little more intuitive with it than a lot of the men I talk to. Not always, but
yeah, many of us get trained away from what our bodies are telling us, right? Those important signals.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
depending on who you are, sometimes women are much better at catching those signals.
Yes. And with that, there's a lot, like, so many symptoms have been normalized in our culture that it's not normal for food to make you have to run to the bathroom and have explosive diarrhea. Like, sorry to be gross, but like that's that's kind of a problem. I mean, that's an extreme case, and it can go the other way. A lot of the women I work with are either dealing with, I would say more commonly, is constipation and not having enough bowel movements. So let's I should have warned everyone, we're going to talk about poop on this episode quite a bit. Because of
you, so let's dig into it.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. Like, what should normal be? How often should we be having a bowel movement?
Well, ideally, you'd be having a bowel movement at least once a day, even 2 to 3 times a day. So if you're not going at least once a day, you are setting yourself up for long-term digestive distress because your body just can't drain fast enough. One of your body's favorite ways to excrete toxins and waste from your various metabolic processes is through your bowels, right? That's the easiest way for it to happen. And some waste can come out through the kidneys and your bladder, but really your body's favorite way is through the bowels, then the skin, and then water-soluble toxins, through the kidneys and the bladder. But your kidneys are not as resilient as your liver is. And your liver's job is to help, clean that blood, break that food down, and shove all those toxins out through the bile. And that's how it's hypothetically supposed to work. But unfortunately, a lot of our toxins that we're exposed to today, our body didn't evolve with them. So they actually get stuck and in the bile, and your gallbladder acts like a catcher's mitt and kind of holds on to the bile in between your digestive processes. So it'll cycle through the gut and then get, because bile is expensive to make, your body wants to reuse it. It's like liquid gold. It's like your body's fancy detergent for the gut. Okay. So it's true.
It's great. Yeah.
And so your body wants to recycle and hold it back in the gallbladder. But then if you weren't able to let go of those toxins and, you're holding on to more and more sluggish bile, 80% of women over 40 have sluggish bile. And if you have sluggish bile, you have toxic bile. So if we're talking about constipation and how often should you be going, if you have a constipated system, chances are you have sluggish bile. They go hand in hand generally,
Yeah.
So that's just one thing to hopefully pique your attention and lean in. We've got the goods for you. We're going to help you through this.
Yes, exactly. And the good news is there's things that you can do to help your body start to function normally again. Like I don't know if you found this in practice, but I found increasingly I keep meeting women who have had their gallbladders removed or are so far gone that like they're at that point where it's hard to bring them back from that. And I think what you just shared about having the toxic bile or sluggish bile is probably a big piece of that.
Yeah, absolutely,
equation.
right. But it's never too late to work on your drainage and reopen your detox pathways and help your body excavate some of the stored sludge out. We work with women all the time that don't have gallbladders anymore. Like one I'm thinking of right now is in her mid 60s, and she was a powerhouse in her career. And she was really one of those women that, could just push through however she was feeling. Had a huge team under her until she no longer could push. And then she got really sick, had to take a step back, do an early retirement. It's really sad. She regrets that now.
Yeah.
But she had to put her health first. And along the way, she had her gallbladder removed, but that didn't actually lessen any of her symptoms. It was just something that had to be done in the moment because it was so far gone and acute. But we've helped her get out thousands of stones in the last few months and hundreds of parasites. And she feels amazing. All of her exhaustion and social anxiety is gone. All of her digestive symptoms and, that local pain that you can get in your upper right quadrant, that's gallbladder and liver distress, usually.
Yeah.
All that fun.
That's so great. And you brought up two things that we are going to dive into here in just a moment, parasites being one of them. We're both very much on the parasite train, and it's a fun conversation, and I get to have that with a lot of my clients as well. But before we launch into that, you also brought up another interesting point around emotion. And so I was going to ask, what are some of the signs that maybe our liver's not functioning well, our body's toxic? Emotions are a big piece of that.
Absolutely. Well, traditional Chinese medicine understood this. The emotions that are associated with the liver and gallbladder are anger and resentment. And for women who are maybe less in touch with their anger, you might be more aware of that resentment or feeling harsher or more judgy than you feel like you used to be. That's a big sign of that. And also persistent anxiety. That's a big one. Because it makes sense. Because, if your body's under distress, toxins each have their own energetic signature as well. Different toxins evoke different emotions in us. Like lead, if you're really high in lead, you could feel really deep, dark depression. With mercury, you can have wild emotional swings or be very socially shy, even socially phobic. How we've sort of made all these fun internet memes about, social anxiety. That's not lost on those of us that understand because mercury exposure is up so high in the last generation. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's been interesting because I'm currently detoxing heavy metals because I finally did some testing on myself, and I've been sharing about this on the show a little bit. But nothing was like astronomically high, but I had of the 26 things I tested, like half registered, and I was like, that's not cool. And I'm somebody who's been on my health journey and like been really attentive to gut health and all that for 16 years, and I'm still dealing with some of this stuff. So it's it's so prevalent. Like even if you feel like you're the healthiest, making all the right choices and doing all the healthy things out there, you probably are. It's often not enough to combat how much we're exposed to.
That's such a great point, Dr. Alex. I really want people listening in to hear, we totally get it. It should be enough to live clean, eat relatively healthy, exercise, a few times a week. That should be enough, but unfortunately it just isn't right now. And so we understand if you feel like you're doing all the right things and you're not where you feel like you should be, intuitively something is off, or you're not healing as fast as you want to be or expect to be, even though you're on a protocol. Your protocol may not be taking these things into account.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive in a little bit. How do we address some of these things, and what can be underlying some of the fun, i.e. parasites that we're talking about?
Yes. So let's start with a basic frame. So parasites, we all have, an amazing, fantastic widely varied microbiome in our guts, and each area of our body has a different microbiome. And we've evolved with parasites, on every continent. This is not just about, I went to somewhere exotic and I got Bali belly. That's where, so I might have parasites, but you might not. It's actually a common misconception. Every body of water has parasites in it, throughout North America. There's a study I love to quote from Wisconsin where 38 out of 40 salad bars tested had parasites in them on. Yes. If you have had sushi, you've been exposed to up to 60,000 parasite eggs per inch of sushi. Wow. Yeah. And if you're American, chances are you're not eating enough wasabi to counteract that. That's what the wasabi's for, So it's not a question of have we been exposed to them? We all have. And it's more a question of do our bodies have what they need? Does our immune system have what it needs to hold these parasites in check? And the answer is at this point, probably not, because our immune systems get dampened down the more toxic exposure we've had and the more toxic sludge we're carrying around. And parasites, unfortunately, really thrive in a toxic environment. So the higher our body burden is of toxins, the easier it is for parasites to come in and take over and set up shop. And they do offer symbiotic processes, like they can hold on to retroviruses and even Lyme and all kinds of toxins for us in their bodies. So you want to be really deliberate when you're trying to pull them out. You want to keep them intact because you don't want to use a parasite protocol that explodes them inside, because that just means you have a whole new toxic exposure your body's got to deal with, and it's a bit of a shock. So if you've ever been if you're listening to this and you've been on a very short-term anti-parasitic protocol and you're like, oh God, I'll never do that again because my energy tanked, I felt horrible, it was awful. Chances are you were on something like that did not prepare you to pull them out intact, whether they're monocell, itty bitty little guys, or the larger long fun worms that Dr. Alex and I were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And, and we've seen all of this happen in our practices. Lots of clients with just cleaning out, whether it's biofilm or worms and I've done this with myself as well. And there's a way to do it that is gentle and, allows your body to really prepare and
absolutely
not have like the massive reactions to it. So
absolutely. And, it's important for you guys to understand, like, if the stage has been set for parasites to go, crazy in your bodies because of our, higher than ever unprecedented toxic exposure, what are some of the symptoms that you might be having these parasites out of whack? Because yes, they are doing a job for us in the short term, but they're also wreaking havoc. They get to eat first.
Yeah.
So you might be, for example, feeling like you eat really well and you try to nourish yourself really well, and you still don't have the energy that you expect to have. That's because they get to eat first. Food sensitivity is a huge sign of parasite issues. Skin issues, most digestive complaints can be correlated to parasites. Anxiety. What are some other ones, Dr. Alex?
I think those are a lot of the big ones. Hormone issues. We haven't dived into that yet, but there's a huge correlation between your gut health and hormone balance, especially with estrogen and with a lot of the sex hormones, but also with your thyroid.
Absolutely. Yeah. Constipation, feeling like you have intestinal blockages that can't be explained by your doctor, like a recurring pinching or stuck feeling at one part of your gut. TMJ, teeth grinding, sleep issues where you feel like you wake up more tired than you went to sleep, or your energy finally comes online in the evening. You struggle to wake up for several hours and then you're like, oh, finally, there's that energy I needed for my workday. That's a sign of parasites, because parasites love to wake up at night. That's when they get going.
They do. And they also they're more active around the full moon, which I've always found really interesting. So there's something called a full moon protocol that can be a lot of fun. We'll just put it that way. That's what I've seen the most activity from, my clients pulling stuff out of themselves, which is great.
Yeah, so worms are more active during the full moon because our guts are producing more serotonin at that time. And so worms migrate to the digestive tract. And yes, you heard me correctly. They migrate to the digestive tract. Go eat that up and get first dibs on that. And that's when they tend to procreate. So that's why ERs have to staff up. We were joking last Halloween because last Halloween landed right on a full moon. Like, oh, those poor kids. Their eyes, their parasites are going to go nuts. Their parents are not going to know what happened.
Oh, it was bad. As a mom, I can say it was bad. No, when you said that, I just connected. Like, that's why kids all get crazier on the full moon. Like,
Yes.
honestly, it's actually a thing.
Right? Absolutely. So kids are more susceptible to parasites just because their immune systems are still getting sophisticated and forming. But they also can detox them more quickly than adults. So there are trade-offs there.
Yeah. They have less toxic exposure in their young age. So it works out. All right. So for anyone listening to this and they're like, how do I know if I have toxicity? How do I know if I have parasites? How do I know, like, what advice can we give them? Where do we start besides talking to one of us?
Right. Yeah. Well, that would be an easy one if you're, able and ready to work one-on-one with somebody. Highly recommend going to somebody like Dr. Alex or myself that is steeped in this knowledge and has tools that actually work and support the body along the way. We'll also give you a few at-home tips to consider for yourself before this is done as well. But how do you know if you have toxicity? Well, the shortest answer is we all do. We're exposed to over 1 million toxic particles per day. And on average, we all have over 20,000 different toxic substances in our bodies at any given time. And our bodies have to do a lot of work to keep some of those apart to avoid setting off secondary and tertiary chemical reactions. So, because like once really common toxins like, say, aluminum, which is in all of our air pollution, and now it's been, it's, oh my God, there's so many ways you can get exposed to aluminum. And once that comes in,
our cookware, it's everywhere. Deodorant,
it's added to flowers, our personal care, things like dry shampoo, aluminum is everywhere. Not just in your deodorant, although I applaud you if you switch to a non-aluminum deodorant. Well done.
Yep.
Just know that there are other steps to take along the way, but that's a great step to take.
Yeah. And remember, we haven't really talked about this, but our skin is one of our largest breathing organisms, like organs on our body, and things we put on it get into our bloodstream and into our bodies as well. It's not just through things we eat or, water we drink or.
Absolutely. No, it's especially for women. We're on average using 12 super toxic self-care products per day. And that's in the U.S. As opposed to men who are using less than 6. It's just a part of how we're marketed to and the self-care routines we develop along the way. So and your skin is super absorptive. So if it's not food and you're putting it on your skin, chances are your body's going to see it as a toxin and extra work to deal with.
Absolutely. We've come a long way since the days of arsenic on the face, but it's still pretty bad. So what was it? 90% of lipsticks tested just a couple years ago had lead in them still from name brands. It's not acceptable. No. And I'll have to find, there's a website, maybe you know what it is, where you can put in whatever product it is and find out how toxic it actually is. Yeah, I like environmental working groups. That's ewg.org because they rate and review products in depth and scale them on 1 to 10 from least toxic to most toxic. And they'll also tell you why they're concerned about certain ingredients in a product and how they arrived at that decision. And it's a nonprofit, so I can ask them a little bit more if they do a great job. Yeah. And they also release the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen eating guidelines every year. So super helpful. That's helpful. Yeah. And I'll put links to those in the show notes. Yeah. So when you're asking, like, to tie it all back together, when you're asking, how do you know if you're toxic? It's safe to assume that you are, and other basic signs and symptoms would be things that we've already covered, a tendency towards anxiety, getting more overwhelmed than you used to, noticing that your energy is not where you think it should be,
And a lot of things that we are now in our generations alive chalking up to, oh, this just happens when you turn 40. Like Dr. Alex was saying earlier, that's common, not normal, usually, to have this like drop off of energy, this weight that you can't shake, especially around the waist, that metabolic disorder type weight that's just kind of inflammation, it's puffiness, right? Ache joints, feeling like you just aren't as resilient physically or emotionally or mentally as you used to be, not feeling like yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And that's without even getting into the chronic conditions that, you know, for example, I experienced, like, you know, fibromyalgia and Hashimoto's disease and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So essentially, any of your symptoms can be tied back to your gut, and toxicity is ultimately what we're talking about here. But, you know, it's really, really true. And I think more and more of the literature and people are becoming more aware of just how important your gut health is in relation to the rest of your body. You know, like when I was in chiropractic school and we had to dissect human cadavers, but like the gastroenteric plexus, it's like a whole nother nervous system. You know, it's really advanced, and we don't realize that. And the brain and the gut are talking to each other. So mental health, huge connection there. Like all emotional stuff, hormone stuff, weight loss stuff. It's all chronic conditions, inflammatory, you know, autoimmune diseases, all can be tied back to your gut.
Absolutely. And just to underscore that for folks, you know, your gastroenteric nervous system, that has more nerve endings than your spinal cord does.
Yeah.
For every 10 signals that your gut sends to your brain, your brain sends one back. So this is supposed to be a major thinking zone for us, right? And a regulatory system.
Yeah. And actually, just to share a story, you know, one of my clients that I did the full moon protocol with, and we both use a supplement company called Cellcore Biosciences, and they've really like gotten the science down of how to detox all the toxicity really, really well. But she did the protocol and got a lot of stuff out of her. And she was like, my mental clarity is just huge. And she became really creative. And she also started processing all this trauma that she'd never dealt with in her life, and was like ready to actually do that because her body was, and you know, just to reiterate what you were saying there, it's really interesting what will happen when you clean yourself out.
Yeah, it makes total sense when we understand that, like, old trauma and stress is actually stored locally in the body in different areas. And wherever it's stored, we actually have lower circulation. And so that's naturally where toxins stagnate, or our systems get smart and actually put it there. Like, okay, this area is compromised. I'm just going to keep stacking stuff in there. So we can call that interference fields, or we can blame that on the fact that, you know, many toxins are what we now call obesogens, where our body has figured out, okay, these are lipophilic, meaning I can shove them into fat as far away from my vital organs as possible just to protect my basic functions every day. So that's what I'm going to do. You know, or if it's, you know, toxins that are stuck in the gallbladder and liver, what choice does your liver have but to encase those in cholesterol? Cholesterol's made in the liver like, hey, this is handy. This is awesome. I'm going to encase this toxin with this stuff to protect me. And then that gets condensed over time and becomes gallstones and liver stones. So when you start actually working a detox plan that works and really supporting your drainage pathways, and by that, Dr. Alex and I mean reopening your skin as a detox organ in a supportive way, cleaning out the bowels, you know, mechanically cleaning out your colon so nothing is standing in between. The junk has got to get out of the liver and gallbladder and getting it all the way out the door. and
even, you know, even up to your brain, like your cerebrospinal fluid that flows down your spine is the brain's way of getting rid of toxins. And if that can't go anywhere because your liver's blocked, you end up with toxic brain, which leads to depression, anxiety, and a lot of other stuff.
That's such an amazing point. You know, so many people that are saying, okay, I don't have, you know, my gut isn't bothering me that much. What I really care about is fixing my brain fog. Sweetheart, I hate to tell you, but the brain drains last. So you actually, if you want to work on having toxins drain out of your brain appropriately, you start from the bottom up.
Exactly. That's a huge piece of the pie.
Yeah. And like you were saying, the right tools make all the difference. Because you guys want to be protecting your energy levels while you attempt any detox, because it takes energy for your body to excavate this stuff out of storage. And you want to make sure that you have really high quality things in place to increase drainage and encourage our natural elimination organs to do what they do best. Yeah. And also have really effective binders on board. And for those of you that don't know what a binder is, they're basically like bouncers in a club, right? So everyone else can be, like all your cells can be happy and having a great time in the club, behaving nice. And then you have, the few toxins in there that are acting like assholes, bumping around, ruining everybody else's life. And the binders come in like bouncers. They take the toxin by the arm and escort them all the way out the door or all the way out the body, down the street. You don't want to get them close to the door and then let them loose again. You got to get them all the way out. That's what binders do.
Awesome. So, any parting thoughts before we share how people can connect with you and where to find you at?
Yeah, if people are thinking about how to get started at home, one of the most important things you can do is start tracking your responses to things. Pay attention to how you're responding to life's different stresses, to your energy cycles throughout the day. Like, become a scholar of your own body. Usually I say become a scholar of your own poo, and that's important too.
That is important too. Really quick, we should define what normal poop is, right? It's soft, it's well formed, and you feel like you empty fully, and you're doing it at least, I like to see more 2 to 3 times a day, because then I know your liver is actually working.
Absolutely, so, yeah. And so if it's super dark in color or smelly or ragged edges or, hard and difficult to eliminate, on either ends of the spectrum, too tough or too loose, your body's in distress and it could really use some support.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So where can people go to connect with you?
You can go to detoxrejuvenation.com, just like it sounds. That's our website. And you're welcome to take our detox quiz. And that helps you assess if your toxic burden is a part of why you're not feeling at your best. And you're also welcome to join us on Instagram. We love to share tips on there. And that's just at Detox Rejuvenation. And cool. You're also welcome to join our Facebook group, which has been called Be True to Your Gut. And I think we're changing it now to, if you're listening to this later, Detox to Thrive, because that's the name of our new podcast, which we're going to have Dr. Alex on.
Yay! I can't wait. Well, Sinclair, thank you so much for joining us and having me not be the weird person who's always talking about poop and parasites. There's more of us out there, and it makes me so glad. So hopefully this helped serve our listeners to just really tune into yourself and what your body needs. And if you're feeling stuck, hey, let's look at your gut.
And if you're not ready to work on this, but you know that you will be in the future, you can already think in terms of, like Dr. Alex was saying, making sure that you're eliminating multiple times a day, making the adjustments you need to your diet in order to do that. Eat as simple and as clean as possible. So if you're turning to food for entertainment or de-stressing, you got to build in some strategies into your day so that's not the only way that you're getting to relax. Your food should be easy on the gut, soothing, simple in this day and age.
Absolutely.
And hydrate. Please hydrate.
You've seen both of us drinking water throughout this, so that's just what I do. My mason jar comes with me to podcast interviews. So.
If anybody's wondering, mine is distilled water. I highly recommend that for most people in the U.S. because if you look up what's in your tap water, you will not be happy. And most filters advertise that they can get out toxins, and what they mean is they can reduce the load. But even most filters that claim to get out things like fluoride that are really hard on your brain, they're actually only reducing it. They're not actually able to get out all of it. But distilled water does. So
good to know. I am drinking hydrogen water, which takes it through a whole process and adds extra hydrogen
awesome
to it. so it hydrates you faster.
Love it.
There we go. Little water lesson to round out the day. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Sinclair, and I'm excited to be on your show in the future, so we'll let everyone know when that happens. And
wonderful. We'll do Parasites 2.0. We'll talk about the different kinds, how you get them out.
Excellent. I love it. All right. We will see everybody next week.
Thanks so much.